How would I import a remittance advice that I've received as a PDF and or Excel to Exo?
A remittance advice. Okay, so if we're talking about PDFs, then what we need to do is use a third-party application that can scrape the data. So data line would be one option, and what they'll do is they'll read the information inside that PDF, and then present that in a format that can be imported into Exo. In terms of remittance advice, I'm imagining we're looking at trying to get that into our bank reconciliation. Obviously, the other option, if that's where we're going, would be bank feeds. So you'd actually import the data from your bank itself once those payments had hit, and that can flow in Exo directly through to your bank link. So as is always the case, we need to know the context behind the question to provide you with the best answer. But that's I guess two answers for the price of one. And if it's a CSV or some kind of text file, again, depending on the context, if it's remittance advice, bank feeds is probably the better option. But we can bring data in as a text file through multiple mediums. There's importers, for example, that do fantastic jobs of importing data into Exo, including doing validation checks, making sure that accounts exist, stock items exist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, let us know the context, and then we can give you the best solution from there.
That was great, Murray. That was the trifecta of answers. That was exactly what I was looking for. I might just add to that, absolutely. If you can get data in through an Excel format or as a mechanism by which we can import without that OCR process, there are tools like the Vision K Xeno importer, a great tool by which we can ensure that we can import data either on a scheduled basis, so once a file gets sent to an FTP, ensuring that all of the Excel business rules get applied through that import process. So that's a really good mechanism to manage those imports. What are those tools I'm sure you're alluding to there? OCR is a great opportunity to make sure that OCR and data imports is a great way to make sure that you're being sticky with your customers and your suppliers. So there's an opportunity for you to reduce that manual data entry and add some value throughout that process. I think it's great to look at. We do have a number of ISVs that we see within the MYOB channel that work to those use cases. And to call out a couple of examples there, Dataline is one, focus on AP, but actually do a number of other solutions around how do we OCR data, how do we scan that, and how do we make sure that we push that into Exo as a solution wherever that data needs to go. Another one just to call out, there's a great product called Lucy that focuses on how do we take PDFs that we receive being purchase orders from customers and how do we import those and turn those into sales orders, taking into account all of those sorts of things like the client has a different SKU to our SKU. We might want to make sure that we're checking price policies and have variations around that. So a great solution there, again, that just talks to this PDFs point. All right, now, how would I create recurring monthly invoices with a prompt or in both debtors and the creditors modules, Murray?
Recurring monthly invoices for debtors. There is a utility in Exo called the subscriptions module, which is specifically designed for recurring monthly invoices. So that, depending on the circumstances, that would be certainly one option to look at. You can also do a batch invoicing of sales orders. So effectively, we can bill out a block of sales orders as a recurring monthly or quarterly or however frequently you like through that. In terms of creditors, one way that we can set it up is through the cash book entry screen. where you can save your batch, your cash book batch. And so that would have all of your different creditors set out on it. And then you can open up that batch, run the batch inside cash book entry, boom, creditor invoice is processed. The downside to a cash book entry is obviously it works with GL, it won't work with inventory items. But then if we're working with inventory items, there's a whole different process that needs to be worked through there to make sure that the stock is handled correctly as well. So hopefully that answers your question, and I'm sure Stephen will come up with some other ideas as well.
Fantastic. No, that was great, Murray. Some good feedback for the attendee asking that question. All right, some thoughts, Murray. This is quite the question. Thoughts on bombs versus kits. Can you have a little bit of an introspective look and give us some feedback on bombs versus kits?
Well, obviously bombs are quite dangerous, so we also very need to be careful around them. No, so the key difference between a bomb and a kit is a kit is really just a collection of stock items. A bomb will, as at the end of a manufacturing process with a bomb has an output item. Like a bomb is set up to make something or blow something up, depending on which bomb you're talking about. Whereas a kit is really just a collection of individual items that are got a wrapper around them. Think of it as a kit is like your gift basket. It's got your chocolates and your crackers and your cheese and it's got a cellophane wrap around the top, and you plonk it down there. Each one of those individual items is a unit, is a product in itself. The kit is the gift basket. A bomb will actually make something at the end of it. So you'll start with a bunch of parts and you'll end up with a radio. That's the difference between a bomb and a kit.
Now, look, let's just say, please do leave the bad dad jokes to Grant. That's his exclusive domain. In terms of bombs, I think just the other thing to add is we can actually do, using job costing, there is a mechanisms by which we can actually create end items as well. Did you just want to talk to that option, Murray?
So within job costing, we can use job costing as well, obviously the manufacturing tool is one of its key components, but the job costing process itself can end up producing an output item at the end of it. In job costing, they call it an asset, which is probably one of the dumbest names in history. It really should have just stuck with what they call it inside bombs, and it's an output item. So you can take your labor and you can take your materials and and everything that is associated with that job. And at the end of that job, you can produce 100 widgets and put those widgets into stock so that they can be sold. So that's the I guess one of the features of job costing.
Yeah, I certainly think that's for those that have got a lot of variability in terms of their sub-assemblies. Perhaps you're not make to order, but you're configured to order or engineer to order. Job costing can be a great way to address that requirement. All right, another one for you here, Murray. When we are entering freight invoices, for each line we place the sales order number and the cost associated. The sales order number and the cost that is associated with. How can I analyze or report on this? What is the best way?
Sorry, Stephen, can you give me that question again? I didn't quite catch the first part.
So when we're entering freight invoices, I'm assuming they're entering creditor invoices for their freight. For each line, they're entering the sales order number, I'm assuming as a reference, or something similar on the creditor invoice. Then they capture the cost associated with each sales order. How can we analyze or report on this? What's the best way? I've got some suggestions to maybe kick off the conversation, if that would help, Murray.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
One of the things that we have certainly seen is this need to better understand gross margin for those organisations that are particularly inventory distribution. If you're doing free in store, if you're absorbing the cost of freight, it can be a real issue in terms of what's the What's the real gross margin that we're actually receiving as an organization? One of the things that we have seen is some clients where they've further extended EXO so that we not only have the raw gross margin at a sales order level, but we have gross margin after freight. And for some organizations, they actually also want gross margin after rebates. So you could potentially actually add some other analysis at the sales order header level, where you take up any additional on costs, be that freight or be that rebates, and you actually aggregate all of that, put it at the sales order so you know what's my gross margin before freight, what's my gross margin after freight, what's my gross margin after rebates, which of course might happen sometime later. Great way to ensure that you're understanding the impact of freight for different regions across the country. You might find out that you've got free in store for Western Australia, and it's absolutely killing you. Just a few thoughts from me. Over to you, Murray.
Yeah, good thoughts too. I guess to close the loop on the question is reporting tools and the mechanism for actually presenting the information to you. And within EXO, because we've got a beautiful open source database, there are lots and lots of options available to us depending on your specific requirements. So we've got port solutions, Focus being a very, very good one. Alchemex, another, if you're more numbers orientated rather than graphically orientated, Alchemex is a great solution. Otherwise, we can go down to the types of solutions your partner can produce for you just straight out of EXO, using Clarity or using the little known and underappreciated Report Writer, which is a great way to suck just raw data out of the system. Talk to your partner about what your reporting requirements are, because there really are a lot of different options that are available to us now. Back in the bad old days, it was Clarity or bust, but now we can really look at a broad spectrum of reporting tools depending on the requirements.
Fantastic. Thanks, Murray. Continuing on with a few more here. Can we set up individual credit limits for sales credits similar to purchase orders and creditor invoices?
Sales credit limits.
Credit limits for sales credits.
So a sales credit, so you're talking about a credit note, and you want to set a credit limit on a credit note.
Probably a debit limit on the, I don't know what you want to call that. Anyway.
Okay, so the context is required. If you're raising a credit note, and maybe they're just raising a credit adjustment, maybe that's what they're putting through. But if you're raising a credit note is crediting an invoice that's already been raised. So we shouldn't be looking at credit limits around that credit note. You're either issuing a credit or you're not issuing a credit. It can't. Yeah, it's one or the other. If you're processing through a credit adjustment, and we're looking at credit limits, the short answer is not directly out of EXO, but what we could do is look at building a business alert. And that business alert could flag you when you're approaching some negative quantity against that debtor account. So say you want a credit limit of $100 credit against that debtor account. If you try and process a transaction, it's going to take you over that. The business alert pops and says, hey, this is going to push you over, and it'll either block you or warn you.
Yep. Great suggestion, Murray. All right. Now, another question here. Is there a way to get OCR in EXO? And we've kind of talked to that a little bit. So maybe that question came in after our previous conversation, but certainly there are some tools, data line, ProSpend being some of those, a way of getting data into a format that we can then import and integrate into EXO.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on here.
Oh. We can also get OCD on EXO as well. Carry on.
Murray, please. All right, are you ready for this one? Just because of that, because of the bad dad joke, I'm going to hit you with a nice long question. Are you ready?
No.
Okay. If you use batch processing via Cashbook for creditor transactions, will that integrate with the creditor transaction listing to make it easy for creditor reconciliation, for example? Point 2, and are you also able to enter the creditor invoice number? Next point, and will batch processing via Cashbook actually allow you to make the payment to the creditor, or is that just going through the GL?
Okay. So to answer the first part, yes, is the short answer. When you do the batch processing, because the invoice numbers are going to change each time, you're going to have to manually change the invoice number, because really what you've got is a saved list of batch of creditor payments processing, not creditor payments, creditor invoices. So you are going to have to work through and enter the invoice number for each of the individual ones for that month or that week or however frequently you're processing it. But the opportunity is there. So there is a column that allows you to enter in the invoice number. So yes, but it's not going to magically know what those numbers are. What was the part 2 or part 3?
And will batch processing via Cashbook actually allow you to make the payment to the creditor, or is it just going through the GL?
No, it's not. It's not making the payment to the creditor. The creditor payment processor screen will make the payment to the creditor.
All right, fantastic. A few more questions here. Is there any way that payroll journal entries can be done automatically? Currently, they are done manually into GL. There's probably a couple of questions we'd need to ask there, but do you want to talk to that one?
Oh, hello, Julia.
Look at this. Julia, can we
Hello.
hit you up with that question?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, sorry, Murray, did you want to say something?
I was going to say the first question is, why are you still on Exo payroll?
That would be my question for sure, because it is end of life, as we know. At the moment, though, you can absolutely do automatic journals. I'm going to put my financy hat on. It's not going to sound pretty, but we'll do the best. You can absolutely do automatic journals from Exo Payroll to business. It is actually very easy to set up. If you need that set up, by all means, reach out to the consultants here. I know Rose is head of that team and would be more than happy to help you with that. No problem at all. And then while I'm talking about that, yes, end of life. So please feel free to reach out to us as well in terms of hopefully moving you from Exo Payroll onto Acumatica Payroll, and we can assist with that as well.
Just to maybe add to that, Julia, the question wasn't specifically identified as being related to payroll employer services. So just add to that, if you are using a different payroll application, and if you can get a output of the journal, there are mechanisms by which we can map that in a similar way that we integrate Exo payroll employer services into Exo and import that general ledger journal into Exo. So yes, is the answer.
I was presuming it was MYOB software. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Now, thank you very much, Julia, for popping in with that one. I don't think I've got any more payroll questions, but in case we do, you can hold the line, please, caller. All right. Now, we have a few questions here around a number of other elements, a few questions actually around Acumatica, but I'm going to jump into a question here. Murray, what new features are available in the latest versions of Exo?
Well, as I alluded earlier, the pre-release version of the Delphi upgrade includes no new features. It's just focused on the Delphi upgrade. But prior to that, the focus from MYOB had been around security enhancements. So they had, for example, upgraded the password security. Administrators can now prevent, or have the option to prevent, users from reusing old passwords. You can set the number of times that you have to change a I create a unique password before you can loop back around and start reusing old passwords again. The database connection details are now fully encrypted, not just the password, but all of the connection details, including like the server string, the username, etc. It's all encrypted. They've also introduced document whitelisting to help prevent malicious files from being uploaded or imported into Exo. So the whitelisting utility provides you with a way of saying, okay, yeah, I'll allow for this file type, say JPEG, PNG, DOC, PDF, etc. I'll allow those types of files to go through, but I'm not going to allow anything else. So yeah, really strong emphasis on beefing up security. For Australian users, payment times reporting has got better. We've got the addition of an invoice received date field now. So you can actually record the date that the invoice was received, as well as all the other information that you're currently having to supply to the ATO. Touched on the Delphi upgrade. That's probably most of the enhancements that we've seen since our last user group. So if you want to know anything back further than that, go watch the old recordings. That's all there.
Thanks, Murray. Now, another question here. If we are using Microsoft Outlook for emails, would that be available on Exo hosted? Great question. Absolutely. One of the things we talked through was that launcher mechanism by which we can have multiple applications. That would include Outlook if you wanted to have that hosted, be that through Office 365, through Microsoft's email services, or through your own Exchange or SMTP environment. All right, moving on to some more questions here. And a few of these remaining ones are actually regarding sort of the Exo to Acumatica journey. I've got one here. What's the process for upgrading from MYOB Exo to MYOB Acumatica? And that's probably a really good one to have a conversation with your business partner, your technical account manager about. It really does depend upon your organization and which how you're using Exo. I think the goal in any application change, such as an ERP solution change, is to make sure that process is not just about lift and shift, but it's actually about getting really good value out of that process. It's not just an upgrade, it's an opportunity to actually introduce change and do things more effectively, more efficiently, and more productively. So it would be a matter of just sitting down with you, working that through. There's a formal methodology that Kilimanjaro has where we actually do a current state, we do a future state. What are some of those new features? What are some of those opportunities to actually do things better? So we'd encourage you just to go through that process. You might just want to go through a design phase, understand what that looks like, understand what the timing is involved, both on your side and the partner side as well. All right, anything to add there, Murray?
I guess from my perspective, the key thing to establish up front is what the business need is. So what's your business driver for moving to an alternative software? And the wording around the question was referencing an upgrade. It's important to understand that moving from MYOB Exo to Acumatica, as it's now known, it's not like upgrading your Exo system to the latest version. They're very different ERP systems. All of the things that Stephen's just talked through are all really important, really valid. But making sure that you've got a clear idea in your mind as to what the business purpose is behind moving before you undertake the journey is for me probably the key.
Fantastic. Three other questions here. Current client using Exo job costing. What are the advantages of moving to Acumatica to support job costing? Can projects match the functionality? Are there any areas where job costing is more comprehensive? I might just talk to that. Just to give you some context, absolutely, the job costing module in Exo is incredibly powerful. Lots of things you can do with it. We talked about some examples there with the output items or assets. Lots of functionality there, depending upon whether you're sort of using job costing for a manufacturing perspective be that a light manufacturing or a value-added service, or if you're actually just using that as a mechanism to sell stuff. The projects module in Acumatica are in a similar way, very strong, slightly different, but that said, projects also has, in conjunction with projects, we have a field service module as well. So there's sort of two modules that can actually provide some of that functionality, as well as an equipment maintenance module. So Acumatica is probably a little bit broader in terms of some of that functionality set. There are specific areas where job costing doesn't have a direct one-to-one replacement with projects, but when you look at field service or you look at estimates within the manufacturing module, it's just actually about understanding what's the best use case and the best functionality to support that business need. Again, let's look at what the improvement opportunities are. Let's look at how we can do things better. This is how we can leverage the tool set with the right pieces. You don't use a hammer for a surgery. We need to make sure we're using the right thing.